Yo, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Crucible Brothers. My name is Lionhearts, and today we're going to be answering the biggest burning question deep inside the souls of the player base at large, and that is, are glaives bad? Now, I know, it really is kind of clear where our priority's at. Crucible, currently on fire. We're over here talking about a niche special weapon, but that's just kind of how we roll. If we did everything negative, frankly, we would stop making videos. We have to do other topics, and I want to talk about glaives, so that's why we're here. But before we get started, this graphic here on screen says that around 85% of you aren't actually subscribed to this channel despite watching our videos, and that's okay. I'll forgive you this one time, but only if you stop what you're doing, hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe for more content coming your way. But if you don't, I will find you. Don't test me. Alright, with that out of the way, why the glaive? Well, it's new, just came out with Witch Queen, it's probably the most unique weapon ever introduced into Destiny, and frankly, I'm a sucker for weird niche in these games. And if you give me the opportunity in a first-person shooter to run around and bonk people over the head with a giant stick, I'm not going to turn that down. Frankly, former demo I made in TF2, it's what I like to do, so obviously this appeals to me. So imagine my shock when I pick up the glaive, go into the Crucible, use it for a few games, and came to the conclusion that, wow, this is awful. At least this was my reaction at first, because it needs to be said going into this that the glaives are niche, they're really weird, and they are, if nothing else, buggy. Before we go any further, just know that if you go and use a glaive right now in the Crucible, you're going to encounter a lot of issues with hit reg on both the melee and the projectile. The shield's not always going to work, and there's going to be a lot of situations where you're going to be left scratching your head, wondering why you do this, why you got out of the bed, why you keep playing this game, where your life is going. And frankly, I can't answer those questions for you, so you have to make that decision yourself before you use the glaive. All I'm going to do is show you how to use the glaive, some of the loadouts that I've found have worked, and talk about its place in the current meta. Anything that happens to you, I unfortunately cannot be held liable for. Alright. Now, I want to touch a little bit on where glaives belong in the meta and if they are, quote, viable, especially in cases like trials or competitive. Now, for a little behind the scenes, I'm recording all of this section after I've recorded the rest of the video, so I've had some time to more consider my thoughts on the glaive and where it belongs in the game. And frankly, I might be putting this section towards the beginning of the video, where I think it'll be more impactful and where more people are likely to listen to it, because that's just how watch time metrics work. Where my mind is at now is that glaives definitely aren't viable. They're not going to be a top-picked weapon pretty much ever. They're strictly worse on paper than shotguns and fusion rifles, and they lose out in the long run to better players with primary weapons. That's all true. But what glaives really have going for them is they are fun. And is that ultimately more important than them being viable when we're talking about a game that isn't strictly a serious competitive shooter? It's definitely an interesting question. Should Bungie be striving towards making things that are just fun but not always viable? Or should we be striving towards a tight, compact, competitive meta version of Destiny? Both ways definitely have their merits, and really, I think we're going to end up somewhere in the middle. We're going to have a defined best set of items in the game always. Whatever the flavor for that season, there's going to be a dominant loadout, but what's important is to have fun, variety playstyles that don't feel too far off, and that's where I think the glaive shines perfectly. Glaives can be better than shotguns in certain scenarios. They can be better than fusions in certain scenarios. On the whole, and over a long enough time scale, they aren't, but they are fun and engaging enough to warrant someone wanting to make them their dominant playstyle. You will run into people who are very good with glaives. That will happen. It's not going to happen often, but those people who have taken the time to master it will get the best out of that weapon type. And maybe that's just okay. Maybe that's just how it has to be. Definitely an interesting discussion. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below, because I don't really know where to go with this. Should everything be meta, or should everything be viable? Because I think there's a big difference between the two. Let me know your guys' thoughts in those comments. Alright, with that daily Destiny philosophy out of the way, let's get into the intricacies of how the Glaive works. The Glaive has three main modes. You got the shooty, you got the stabby, you got the blocky. When you go stabby mode, you deal 75 damage per hit, and you have roughly the same melee range as an Ophidian Aspect Warlock at about 7 or 8 meters, with very forgiving lunge and aim assist. The time to kill on these slaps in 3 hits is roughly the same as a Guardian double smacking you with his melee, which means you gotta be careful when you start those slap fights. You can augment that by using the shooty function. The shooty function is a projectile, it does not hit scan. In terms of travel speed, I would say the projectile is roughly a little bit faster than a mountaintop rocket, if that gives you any kind of frame of reference. The projectile does around 130 damage, and has a pretty forgiving range. The rate of fire of the Glaive is 55 RPM, except for the Hunter Exotic Glaive, which enjoys a faster rate of fire at 80. This means that the double shot projectile time to kill is around 1 second, with the Hunters enjoying a faster time to kill than that because of its faster rate of fire. Alright, so great. My special ammo weapon kills slower than most primaries, and doesn't melee any faster than Guardians basically punching each other. So how the hell do you make this viable? Well, use the last functionality of the Glaive, and that is the shield. When you spawn in, your shield has 0 charge, but every projectile hit you land will give you some amount of shield capacity. And thanks to a recent change from Bungie, shields now universally go to full after 4 projectile hits. Once you deploy your shield with your secondary fire button, you now have a shield that covers up 75% of your Guardian's hitbox, leaving only your beautiful little legs exposed, and this will block all incoming damage from damage sources except for AoE damage sources or splash damage. This gives you an insane, versatile amount of survivability akin to the Antaeus Ward's exotics for the Titan, sometimes just bodying and eating shotgun shots for breakfast, telling that Fusion Rifle user to go f*** themselves and making snipers cry. This shield is what makes the Glaive any kind of useful. Once you start learning how to use this in the right situations, you can augment your awful time to kill and use it to close the gap and equalize the advantage and help you secure kills. What's really nice about the Glaive is that it enjoys a lot of the same benefits that Mountaintop used to enjoy. Because it's a linear, straight traveling projectile that goes from X to Y with no deviation, you essentially don't have any in-air accuracy penalties, so you can get very shifty with how you position yourself. Using certain exotics and certain subclasses, suddenly you're able to do these 130 damage chunks from some of the dumbest off angles known to mankind. This also makes you an unparalleled peak shooter. Basically, you just have a giant hand cannon in your hands, and you enjoy all the same dumb benefits that hand cannons get from jiggle peeking corners and doing huge chunks of damage. Basically, by mastering the art of the gremlin, you can take the disadvantages of the Glaive and essentially nullify them, and put yourself into some pretty disgusting 1v1 scenarios. And most of all, remember that you're using a melee weapon, so you don't make a whole lot of noise when you're slashing, so you can sometimes just sneak up on groups of unsuspecting Guardians and get huge multis off. So when designing the Glaive loadout, we want to build into this shiftiness. Now, speaking from a Titan main's perspective only here, we're going to give you what I think is the best Titan Glaive loadout. And that's abusing the Lion Rampant's exotic boots. Now, these boots may be familiar to you if you're a PvE player who likes to go out of bounds, or you're a real old school player who remembers Titan skating back in the day. But for a long time, they've heavily fallen out of favor unless you're an AC-130 dickhead with a DMT and a grenade launcher. But they now have newfound life with the Glaive, in my opinion. The Lion Rampants accentuate every good aspect of the Glaive. They let you stay in the air longer, float into weird off angles, and most importantly, give you even better accuracy with this hipfire only weapon. Pair this up with a good mid-range primary, I like pulse rifles, and suddenly you have a pretty versatile loadout on your hands. The Glaive is one of the best cleanup tools in the game because that 130 flat damage can get you quite a lot of kills even after minimal chip damage from your teammates. I mean, we're talking one hand cannon shot from a 140 and the Glaive can clean up. So hopefully this ramble through these sick, twisted thoughts that are in my mind maybe convinced you to give Glaives a try, and if it did, you're in luck. The best Glaive is the first one you get when you start the Witch Queen campaign. The Enigma is pretty much the only viable glaive because it gets Impulse Amplifier. That makes the projectiles faster and more consistent. Pair that with a damaging perk like Rampage or Unstoppable Force, and you're ready to go. And if you're like me and you're looking for a break from some of the familiar things we've been using in Destiny for going on 17,000 years now, give the glaives a try. Try something new, go poke each other in the Crucible, embrace your inner caveman, and just start going spear mode. And that's all we have for you guys today. Let us know what you think about glaives in the comments down below. What are some of your favorite off-meta weapon options? I'd love to hear them. Show me some of your weird stuff you like to bring to the Crucible, and we'll be down there responding as per usual. While you're down there, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more Crucible Brothers content coming in the future. But most of all, your views are all that matter to us. My name is Lionhearts, and the other guy who didn't say anything because he's an asshole is Gumi. And we will see you guys in the next video.